And there it is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Thursday. This is the last Facebook Live of the year. And fitting, I thought, since I started doing these Facebook Lives with Dan Mumm, I thought, what a better way to finish it than with Dan Mumm so he can fill us in how his year went, because I'm thinking it went pretty good. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure to be back. It's been a crazy year. Like you said, to end it and start it with the same person. So we were just joking. I don't think I had a beer at the time, so that's the only difference, I think. But yeah, it's been a good year.
Yeah, some people had really good years, and some people. It's a funny thing is people tell me, "Well, Rick, people in your coaching, what kind of years did they have?" I go, same thing. A third of them had a better year, a third of them had the same year, and a third of them had less of a year, and that's always the case, whether there's a pandemic or not. So when we started in March, we were maybe a little concerned for a few weeks, but I would say that's about it because the numbers went down and they started right back up the other way. Was that your experience as well?
Yeah, with regard to what number of transactions, or you're talking about market conditions, or my?
Yeah, talking about pendings and closings and so forth.
Yeah, it's the number of transactions is, I think, trending about the same as last year. It might be slightly down because there's less good inventory out there, but with regard to the balance of buyers and sellers, it hasn't changed at all. If anything, it's even more low inventory now than it was. Depending on how you look at it, there's about 5,300 homes for sale right now, so that's definitely down from last year around this.
Yeah, if you have 5,300 homes on the market, does that include condos and everything too?
Yeah, condos and townhomes included in that. Yeah,
and that's all of MLS too, right?
No, that's just for like not including suburbs and like Mount Charleston. So that's what I'm saying. It depends on how you cut it up, but long story short, yeah, the inventory, I think no matter how you look at it, December 2020 over 2019, the inventory is lower. Prices are up in most places about 5 to 6%, I think, and most people are expecting the same next year. So it's really interesting when we first started these, how doom and gloom some people were, and I guess some people are always that way, and some people are investors, so they want the market to tank so that they can buy stuff for cheap and make money. But it just didn't turn out to be the way a lot of people expected. It's been good for us, though, good for agents and people that are active in the business who are selling and proactive.
Yeah, no doubt. It's been a really good year for people that actually went out and did it, as opposed to looking for an excuse not to. And it doesn't matter what's going on. You'll always find people like that. But yeah, I think closings are up September, October, November, almost 30% over last year. The only 2 months that were probably a little lower were April, May, June got almost back, and then July through now have been some record-setting months actually for, years in Las Vegas. Same with Phoenix, same with Orange County. Everywhere we are, it's been amazing. But as far as, but there are agents that haven't done as well. And so tell us about your year, man. How are you going to finish this year, and what is your goal for next year?
Yeah, it's my best year ever. I had a pretty ambitious goal this year, which was to almost double over last year, but I'll end up doing about 25% more. So right now, I just looked at it. I have about 650 GCI gross. The goal is to do 1 million, so I'm short of that, but I had some challenges this year, but it's still the best year I've ever had. Number of transactions, pretty similar to next year. I'll end up around 70, 75. That was on purpose, though, because I had a little bit of a change in my business strategy and where I was getting my business from. But obviously, the income being the most important thing, having that be 20% more than last year, I'm pretty happy with that.
That's
25% more. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that's really good. 650 GCI, 75 closed transactions. That's way better than a sharp stick in the eye. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
All right, good. And what's the goal for next year?
1 million GCI and 106 number of transactions.
So based on your transactions, because I know that one of the things you did do this year is raise your average sale price too, didn't you?
Yeah, that was a big part of my income increasing, was the average sales price increasing. And a lot of that had to do with where I was getting my business from. Last year, I had an investor partner who he would send me referrals for listings that were usually lower price point listings, and there was a hefty referral fee, so I wasn't making a lot of money off of those. It was still profitable, but I bet on myself, and I thought if I had all that time back and I was able to just work my database and prospect the way I know I can on my own, I was confident that I could make more money on my own than I was working those deals. So that's why the number of transactions didn't really go up. because he was sending me a large number of leads, but I was able to do just as much on my own and make a lot more money, which is the whole goal.
And it's nice not to rely on somebody to do a major percentage of your business, because then you become somewhat of a hostage. I know, because I had new construction in my business too. It wasn't good.
Scenario is that.
Yeah. And it's way more. You feel way more comfortable knowing that you know what to do every day, and it's all arm's length and one at a time. And if you get multiple from somebody, that's great, but you don't have to have it happen in order for you to achieve your goal.
Yeah, and a big improvement for me this year was raising the quality of my business and the quality of the people that I'm working with. And that all goes hand in hand with that. So not only did I make more money, but now I'm working with clients that I really enjoy talking to. There's no one now that I'm working with that I just, those clients where you don't really want to call them because, the conversation might be a little bit tough, or they might be a little bit mean or upset with you for whatever reasons. I don't have any clients like that. Everyone that I'm working with is an absolute pleasure to work with, and it's just made my lifestyle and quality of life better. So that's worth a lot, I would say.
Yeah, and some of the positive posts I've seen you do on Facebook and Instagram and so forth, looks like your customer service is really, really up, and you had a tremendous year with that. And let's face it, that's how you're going to do a repeat and referral. Because you remember when we started talking a few years ago, even 3-4 years ago at Success Series, most of what you talked about were expireds for sale by owners. Now, in the last year and a half, you're pretty primarily talking about your sphere and your database.
Yeah, it's definitely trended in that direction for sure.
Yeah. Tell them a little about that process, please, because I think that's important, because you're only, what is this? You're beginning of your 6th year in the business, right?
Next year will be my 6th. Yeah.
Yeah. So so in order for you to go from where you were not doing anything to closing 106 last year, you had to go through that whole gamut of all 5 lead sources to graduate to relying a lot of it on your CRM, but it took you a little while to get there.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for everything and any kind of lead generating. I think there's more than one way to skin a cat. So I'm not saying the way that I did it was incorrect, but if you're new, it's hard to rely on your database, because especially if you don't have a large database, you don't know when those deals are going to come in. You could have great relationships and people in your corner, but you can't really predict when you're going to get a referral. Now, the trick is, once your database gets large enough, it has enough scale, if you're calling those people regularly, it starts to become more predictable. Because if I have 2,000 people in my database and I'm doing a good job talking to them, I should be able to get 200 deals just from that database per year. That's a pretty large number, but you see where I'm going with this. When you're new and you only have 40 people in your database, that's 4 deals. You don't really know when those 4 deals are going to come. So when I was new, I relied on the more reliable methods of prospecting, which I still do every day. I think I'm better at it now than I was then. I practice more now than I did before. It's just the amount of time that I'm spending on those, and the amount of mental focus is less. But yeah, those leads would be expired listings for sale by owners. Those are the lowest hanging fruit, I would say, for listings, because those are people that have already said that they want to sell their home. Yes, they're harder. Yes, they're more difficult. Yes, there's a ton more rejection, but they produce better results, and you can get business from those quickly. So I think most agents probably who are in the business for a long time go through the same growth pattern as I do, where they start primarily on the more expired and for sale by owner lead sources, and then they graduate more towards working their database. And the reason is your database is just the gold mine. That's the whole essence of being in a successful, profitable real estate business, is having a valuable database. Those deals are easier, they're more profitable, they're less headache, the clients are easier to work with, easier to get reviews, easier to service the customers better, gives you more energy and enthusiasm, easier to get them priced right. So just across the board, it's a better way of doing business. But at the same time, you have to look at it as an entrepreneur and say, well, I can't, if I'm brand new and I don't have a database, that doesn't work. So I have to start doing something that will supplement that.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, you basically created your own over time by doing all the other lead sources. And now you can do a little of the other lead sources and a lot of your database and do very well in the business. And that's the message there for everybody is, it takes a while to get there, but as long as you keep prospecting and putting people in there, you will get there. Now, you said something too that I agree with, but I've gone down early in my career kind of the same path you did, which is I worked all those uncomfortable ones. I practiced my scripts, my dialogue. So when you say, those are the easier ones, well, they're the easier ones if you have skills.
That's
right?
a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah. You got to have skills.
Yeah, that's the whole beauty, which I didn't mention, of working expired listings, is if you can take an expired listing and sell it, you can really do any kind of business. Like that's the most challenging type of deal on average that you're going to come across. So it's almost like the calling expired listings or for sale by owners. It's like the battlegrounds for your real estate skills. That's what's going to sharpen your skills up. So when you go and talk to your database, you get 1/10 of the level of resistance, if any. Maybe the person asks you, "Hey Dan, will you cut your commission?" "No, I won't." "Any other questions?" "I know you'll be happy with the service. I'm ready to go to work for you. Let's get started." But with an expired listing, it's going to be a lot more significant on average. So yeah, that's a really good point. The one thing that I would do differently, I wouldn't not have called the expireds and for sale by owners because there's so much value there. But I think what I would have done differently is I would have been more methodical in the beginning about growing my database. So for me, I moved here and I didn't really know anyone. I lived in Vegas a short time before I started selling, and that's probably true for some of the people watching. So I always had this excuse. It was really just a mental barrier, but I just had this excuse in my head. Oh, well, I don't know anyone, so I have to call expired. So it's like, that's the only way I'm going to get business. And that, to a degree, that's true, but you have to start your database somewhere, right? It doesn't just come out of nowhere. And if you're only growing your database by adding past clients in there that you're prospecting, it's going to take a really long time. Like to get to 2,000 past customers, it's going to take a while, right? So you probably need another way to meet people and add names to your database. And in the beginning, I would have been more intentional, methodical about that. For example, I would have, an exercise that I do now is I say, okay, I'm going to add 2 people to my database every week, 2 people that know me on a first name basis, that are comfortable with me, that would send me a referral. They're not a realtor or have a realtor friend. I'm their guy, so to speak. I'm going to add 2 of those people every week to my database. I wish I would have done that earlier.
Yeah. And people go, well, 2 a week, that doesn't sound hard. Well, that's 104, a year. So that's good. And when you say add to the database, it means, so they understand this, it means you're putting them in there because you talk to them, they know you, you know them. Your sneaking suspicion is if you stay in touch with them, they'll refer you business and their friends and family as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's another important point is we should all be clear on what it means, what the word database means, because it can mean a lot of different things. When I'm talking about it, what Rick's talking about here, when we say database, that's exactly what we mean. Someone who knows you, not someone that if I call them and I say, "Hey, this is Dan," they say, who's this? Someone who actually knows me and who's willing to refer me business, who doesn't have a realtor relationship. When you're new, you typically think everyone's in your database and you have this big list of 2,000 emails and you think your database is 4,000 people big. But no, you have to really look at the quality of your database. As I've gotten more experience and as I moved along, I've gotten more strict in my definition for who actually belongs in my database. And people don't stay forever too. So, past clients typically stay, but your database, think of it like a living organism. There's stuff that goes in and stuff that goes out. You need to constantly be feeding it because, some relationships just go away. People move away. You lose touch with certain people. So anyways, long story short, you just need to constantly work on that.
No, it's true. It's a good point because when I was prospecting Mind, if they were nice and they seem like they referred me business, 18 months later they're still saying okay, and they've never referred me anybody. You take them out. I had one like my email list. If I had an email address from you, you stayed in there for life unless you opted out. Yeah. But the one I'm going to call, totally agree with that. The ones you're going to call, they have to be referring you business. Otherwise, you can call somebody else, right?
Yeah. Agreed. And there's some exceptions to that too. So I'd be careful. But yeah, as a general principle, I think that's true. For example, I had someone recently, this was just a couple of weeks ago. I helped this guy buy a house. I actually helped them sell in by like 2 years ago. Yeah, it was 2018. Called him every 90 days since then. He was happy. Transaction went great, but just never answered. And I was like, that's kind of weird. Like, can't even get a hold of him or his wife at all. Just trying to check in, see how they're doing. Even tried finding them on social media and like adding them on there. And they responded there. They're like, yeah, we're doing great. Thanks. But just still never answered my calls. Then 2 weeks ago, he calls me and he wants to list his house, his new house.
Wow.
Like, oh, yeah, thanks. And I was like, just out of curiosity, like, how have you guys been doing? I've been trying to call you. I haven't heard from you. He's like, yeah, I don't know. Never got to it. So you don't take that stuff personally. People have their own lives going on. So don't insult me when people don't, can't take it too personally.
Yeah, especially that sounds like a driver personality. He's getting in touch with me and that's great. So if I ever decide to, he doesn't need to know that. But And then all of a sudden, boom. So yeah, you're right. You can't take any of this personally, although it's tough some days. I totally agree. Okay, so my favorite question. Now you've been doing this. You're starting your 6th year. You've closed 70 something 2 years in a row, and the second year even more impressive because you eliminated the investor, replaced it with your own, increased your sale price, which increased your income by 25%, which is incredible, by the way. Great job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So knowing what you know now, you've already given us a couple of tidbits, but what would be the 3 most important things you tell them to focus on in order to really maximize this thing called real estate?
Yeah, it's always interesting. It's good for me to think about this question too. The one thing that I'm thinking about now, which I just mentioned, is being more intentional about your database. It's easy to lose sight of that. The reason why it's tough is because it's a very long-term payoff. You adding a couple names a week to your database isn't going to make you rich today. It's not going to make you rich in the next week. It's not going to make you rich this year even. So there's other forms of prospecting we can do that will pay you quickly. Your database is a very long-term investment, but what you find in life is that the things that are the most long-term investments tend to be the best uses of your time. So I would pay very close attention to that with regard to being intentional about growing your database. Don't say what I said, where you say, "Oh, well, I don't know anyone. I only know a few people. I don't talk to a lot of people." Like, okay, I get it. I'm the same way. I'm naturally an analytical person, so not naturally people oriented, but you have to learn to take some of that on and really start working at that. The second thing that I would do differently if I was starting just brand new, if I just wanted to move faster and get to where I am now faster, I would have just leveraged and delegated more earlier, which that was actually a strength for me. I hired an assistant pretty early, but I went through the normal gradual steps of having a part-time TC and then having one full-time TC and now having two full-time staff people. If I was starting right from the beginning, I probably would have hired someone right away just because I knew that will cause you to grow faster because it's going to force you to produce at a higher level. So that'd be another thing. And then the third thing, I guess, would be I never really understood until recently the true value of coaching and aligning yourself with people who are doing what you want to do. That's going to be extremely beneficial. So who you have in your personal network that's guiding you in the right direction is extremely important. So if you're the smartest and wealthiest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room. So I would consider that. And if you don't have access to someone who's done the type of production you want to do, or who's run the type of real estate business you want to run, if you're not talking to someone like that, you're not going to get there because you need some proximity to that. You need to learn how to do it. It's going to be really tough for you to trailblaze and figure it out on your own. So I know, Rick, you do coaching. I'm part of the Mike Ferry coaching program. And I'm not saying that's for everyone, but I would find someone that aligns with what you're trying to do and start committing to that early on. I would commit to that financially and also with your time, because it's my opinion that getting free advice if I get advice for free, it doesn't really mean a whole lot. So
Right.
There's some value to that when you're new because you need some direction and where to go. And it's you're strapped for money typically when you're new. But I would say pretty early on in your career, you're going to want to find a coach where you can really commit to learning their school of thought with real estate.
Yeah, well, and you're a unique individual that really subscribes to accountability. I believe in it too. I think it's, if you're not being held accountable, it's kind of like sports, like your background, you're in sports, mine sports. If you're being held accountable, you're getting more out of yourself, but it is uncomfortable. And everything you just mentioned has a slice of uncomfortability factor to it that makes you better. So if you got it down and then you're not trying enough, you need to be stretching all the time and learning more.
Yeah,
so
and
great
then
stuff.
Skills. We always talk about it, but that's a natural strength for me. So I don't normally think about it. I'm not naturally skilled, but I naturally know that the real estate business is a skill business. It's not a knowledge business. You don't have a knowledge problem. You have a skill problem. And the perfect example of that is everyone knows what to say. If I ask you, what are the most common objection handlers? If a seller asks you to reduce your commission, what do you say? If you ask most agents that, they could tell you the answer. It's not that they don't know what the right answer is. The problem is that you don't actually say it when you're doing the presentations. And the reason you don't say it is because your mindset's not strong enough. You haven't practiced it. It doesn't come naturally. You're thinking about other things that are going on in the presentation because you haven't done it enough. So I would say that's the fourth thing, I guess, if I were to give anyone advice who's relatively new is to look at the business as a skill business and practice and rehearse. There's no one that's too good to practice. That makes no sense to me. Like none of us have it figured out. I don't have it all figured out. I practice now, again, more than I ever have. So I would encourage you to think the same way.
It's one of the number one. First off, this is what an average agent does, and you've already mentioned it. I'll say, okay, like Dan Mumm, he'll close 80 deals this year. Okay, how many years has he been doing this? How big is his database? They immediately want to disqualify that you have an advantage over them, and you don't. It's only your 6th year in the business. You created all of that in 5 years, which is incredible because you did all the other things that we just mentioned, okay? That's number one. And number two is getting them to practice, a listing presentation or their scripts or role play. To me, like you just said, is kind of weird because, every time you talk to somebody, it could be a $12,000, $15,000 conversation. You might as well get good at it, right?
Great.
All right, cool. All right, any final thoughts you have for this wonderful group, Dan the Man?
No, it's good. We haven't done this in a while, so hopefully that was helpful for some people, but that's all I got.
Well, you already got a couple comments here. Randy Millmeister says, it's a great interview, and Evelyn says, congratulations. Evelyn Meza says, congratulations, Dan Mumm, on your year. So you already got a couple comments, and this thing, it plays for 24 hours. We actually do a whole new thing now. Sydney does a whole new thing. She takes little snidbits out and puts it everywhere. I even have a TikTok account now.
Oh, man.
But I told her I will not dance. All right, Dan. Hey, well, listen, I really appreciate all the help you've given all these agents this year, starting with me and then finishing this year. And, running the Success Center for so long. Now we've got Jamal doing it. He's doing a great job, by the way. He's getting great interviews, getting great reports on it. Mark's loving it. So I really appreciate it. I know you will close 106 next year. Triple figures. That's the next step, man. Yep. Triple figures.
Yep, I'm excited.
And you're going to have a longer gross number at top, too. It's going to have a whole nother digit to it.
Yeah, digit. That's the goal. I'm excited for that.
All right, man. Congratulations in advance. Keep it rocking, and congratulations on this year. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Dan.